The name Kurt wrote 67 times. Kurt Cobain was found dead on April 8, 1994. But what the police discovered in his final journal entry would haunt investigators for decades. A single name, written 67 times across 2 pages. A name that wasn't Courtney's. A name that wasn't Frances Bean's. A name that nobody in Nirvana's inner circle had ever heard before. The truth about those final hours would change everything we thought we knew about Kurt's death. It was April 5, 1994, around 11 p.m. at the Lake Washington house in Seattle. The massive 5,000-square-foot home sat on a hillside overlooking Lake Washington Boulevard East. Kurt had been missing for 6 days after leaving the Exodus Recovery Center in Los Angeles on April 1st. Courtney Love was in Beverly Hills at the Peninsula Hotel, frantically calling everyone she knew. Dave Grohl was in Virginia, working on new music, unaware his bandmate was in danger. Chris Novoselic was at his farm in Washington, thinking Kurt was still in rehab. But someone else knew exactly where Kurt was that night. Someone who has never been identified. Dylan Carlson, Kurt's best friend who had purchased the Remington Model 11 20-gauge shotgun with him just days before at Stan Baker Sports on March 30th, would tell police something that sent chills down their spines. The deposition, sealed for 20 years and only released after a Freedom of Information Act request, contained disturbing details. "Kurt called me that night," Dylan said, his voice shaking in the recorded deposition. It was around 11:30 p.m. He sounded different. Not high. Not drunk. But different. Like he was in a trance. He kept repeating a name, over and over. Must have been 50, 60 times during that call. I kept asking him, "Kurt, what are you talking about? Who is that?" But he just kept saying it. The name was BODDAH. Not BODDAH, not Buddha. But BODDAH, spelled exactly that way. Written 67 times across the journal pages in increasingly erratic handwriting. The same name that appeared at the top of his note. But here's what nobody talks about, what the media deliberately ignored or never discovered. BODDAH wasn't just Kurt's imaginary childhood friend, as the sanitized version of the story goes. Tom Grant, the private investigator Courtney Love hired on April 3rd to find Kurt, discovered something that the Seattle Police Department tried desperately to keep quiet. Grant, a former Los Angeles County Sheriff's detective with 20 years of experience, knew something was wrong the moment he entered the greenhouse. The crime scene was all wrong, Grant explained in a 2019 interview, finally breaking his silence after 25 years. The positioning of the body, the shotgun placement, the dead paraphernalia, none of it made sense for a suicide. But that wasn't the strangest part. In the greenhouse, where Kurt's body was found by electrician Gary Smith on April 8th at 8:40 a.m., there was a second journal. This journal, unlike the red spiral notebook containing the suicide note, has never been released to the public. Grant saw it for exactly 3 minutes before Detective Cameron from the Seattle PD confiscated it. The second journal was different, Grant revealed, his hands trembling as he recalled that morning. It wasn't Kurt's usual writing. His journals, which I'd seen photocopies of, were chaotic, stream of consciousness, filled with drawings and random thoughts. This was methodical, calculated, like someone in a fever dream. The name BODDAH appeared on every single page, but each time it was written differently, sometimes in block letters, sometimes in cursive, sometimes backwards, sometimes in patterns that looked almost like symbols. According to 3 separate handwriting experts who examined photocopies before the journal mysteriously disappeared from evidence, the word BODDAH was written in 2 distinct styles. Dr. Marcel Matley, the same expert who would later authenticate documents in the CBS News controversy, stated unequivocally, the first 33 iterations match Kurt Cobain's verified handwriting samples. The last 34 do not. They're similar, like someone trying to copy his style, but the pressure points, the letter formations, the flow, all different. Michael Callie DeWitt, the male nanny who lived at the Cobain house and was one of the last people to see Kurt alive, made a shocking confession to Rolling Stone in 2000, breaking a 26-year silence that he claims was enforced by legal threats. The night of April 4th, I saw Kurt in the main house, not the greenhouse. DeWitt stated, his voice barely above a whisper. It was around 10 p.m. He was at the dining room table with his journal, the red one. He was writing the same word over and over. His hand was moving so fast it looked like he was possessed. But he wasn't alone. DeWitt paused, visibly shaken by the memory. There was someone else in the room, someone sitting across from him. I couldn't see their face clearly because they were backlit by the window, but I could see their outline. They were tall, thin, wearing what looked like a dark coat. They were watching Kurt write, not saying anything, just watching. Kurt looked up at me. DeWitt continued, tears now streaming down his face, and said something I'll never forget. His eyes were completely clear, not drug-addled like people claimed. He said, "BODDAH knows the truth. When I'm gone, BODDAH will tell them about the music, about the deal, about why it has to be now." Then the other person in the room turned to me. I still couldn't see their face, but their voice was deep, almost whispered. They said, "Leave. Now." I ran. I literally ran out of that house and didn't come back until the next morning. The Seattle Police Department's official report, case number 94506431, states definitively that Kurt was alone when he died, but newly released crime scene photos from 21 obtained through another FOIA request show something the original investigators either missed or deliberately ignored. In the greenhouse, visible in photograph 1037, there were 2 cups of tea on the small table next to Kurt's body. Both were half-finished. Both had lipstick marks. But here's the thing. Kurt wasn't wearing lipstick. The lipstick was analyzed years later when the cups were finally tested. It was MAC Russian Red, the same shade Courtney Love famously wore. But Courtney was in Los Angeles. Her alibi was rock solid. Dr. Cyril Wecht, the famous forensic pathologist who examined the Kennedy assassination and the John Benet Ramsey case, was hired by a documentary crew to review the Cobain case files in 20. What he found defied medical explanation. The pattern of rigor mortis and livor mortis suggested Kurt had been dead for at least 72 hours when found on April 8, Dr. Wecht stated in his report. This would place his death on April 5 or possibly even April 4. But the journal entry with BODDAH written 67 times was dated April 5, 11:47 p.m. The ink analysis, conducted by the FBI lab, showed the writing occurred over a period of approximately 4 hours. Some of the ink had dried and oxidized in a way consistent with being written before death, but some of it, specifically the last 34 iterations, showed chemical properties suggesting they were written up to 48 hours after the first. How do you write in a journal after you're dead? Rosemary Carroll, Courtney Love's own entertainment attorney, and the wife of Danny Goldberg, Nirvana's former manager, kept detailed notes about her conversations with Courtney in the days following Kurt's death. These notes, which she showed to journalists, but never officially released due to attorney-client privilege, contained a bombshell revelation that changes everything. April 6, 3:14 a.m. Carol's notes read, her handwriting neat and precise. Courtney cold, hysterical, kept saying, "BODDAH isn't who you think it is. BODDAH is real. Kurt didn't make him up. He met him in Seattle, 1993, at the Aurora Avenue clinic. Find out who BODDAH is, and you'll know why Kurt is dead. Check the clinic records. BODDAH is. It's a real name." When pressed about this years later in a 2019 interview with The Guardian, Courtney Love refused to elaborate, her face going pale at the mention of BODDAH. "Some secrets should die to the dead," she said, then added something chilling. "But they don't. They never do. BODDAH is still out there." But BODDAH didn't stay hidden. In 2018, Frances Bean Cobain, now 26 years old, 1 year younger than her father when he died, was going through her father's belongings in preparation for a documentary when he found something that had been hidden for. Inside the lining of Kurt's favorite green Daniel Johnston cardigan, the one he wore during MTV Unplugged, was a piece of paper, folded 7 times. On it was a phone number, 2006-555-0147, and a single word, BODDAH. Frances, against her mother's explicit and frantic warnings, had the number traced through old Pacific Bell records. It belonged to a Seattle residence from 1994, specifically a basement apartment at 1101 Lake Washington Boulevard, less than 3 miles from Kurt's house. The owner of that phone line in 1994 was listed as B. Oddah. Not a typo, not an alias. B. Oddah was a real person with a real address, a real phone number, and a real connection to Kurt Cobain. Department of Licensing records show that B. Oddah was a 34-year-old man, born February 20, 1960, making him exactly 7 years older than Kurt. He worked at the Aurora Avenue Methadone Clinic, where Kurt had briefly sought treatment in September 1993 during Nirvana's In Utero tour. Employment records show B. Oddah was a night counselor, working the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. He had access to patient files. He had access to Kurt. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. Oddah disappeared on April 6, 1994. The day after Kurt's death. According to the forensic timeline, he was never again. His family, a mother in Spokane and a sister in Portland, filed a missing persons report on April 10th. They said he'd called them on April 5th, saying he had to finish something important, and that after tonight, everything would be different. Seattle police, now forced to investigate due to media pressure, searched B. Oddah's apartment in May 1994. What they found has been sealed in evidence for 30 years, but Detective Mike C. Sinksy, now retired, broke his silence in 20. The apartment was empty, Sesinski recalled, visibly uncomfortable discussing the case. Completely empty, except for 3 things. A cassette tape labeled KC Final Session, April 5, 1994. A Polaroid photograph that I can't describe. It was confiscated by federal agents within an hour. And the walls. He paused, taking a drink of water with shaking hands. The walls were covered in writing. The word Kurt, written 27 times in what forensic analysis confirmed was human blood. But DNA testing revealed it wasn't Kurt's blood. It wasn't B. Oddah's blood either. The DNA didn't match anyone in any database. But here's the truly unexplainable part. Carbon dating of the blood showed it was approximately 27 years old. The blood on those walls had been drawn from someone in 1967, the year Kurt was born. The cassette tape was seized by the FBI and classified under national security provisions that have never been explained. Freedom of information requests have been denied repeatedly, with the statement, release of this material would constitute a clear and present danger to national security and public safety. Oddah, born Eldon Hoke, the drummer and singer of the shock rock band, The Mentors, gave his infamous interview about Courtney Love, allegedly offering him $50,000. What most people don't know is that he mentioned BODDAH in that final interview, just days before he was mysteriously killed by a train in Riverside, California. Kurt told me about BODDAH once, Oddah said in the unedited footage, clearly intoxicated but coherent. It was December '93. At some party in Hollywood, Kurt was wasted. But he got real serious all of a sudden. He grabbed my arm hard and said, "BODDAH is real, man. I met him at the clinic. He knows things. He showed me things." He said I had to make a choice. I asked what choice, and Kurt just stared at me and said, "The same choice they all made. Morrison, Hendrix, Joplin. The choice you make when BODDAH comes to you." When asked what choice, Oddah responded with something that was edited out of the original broadcast. "The deal for immortality. Die at 27, become immortal. Stay alive, fade away. The body is the keeper of the list." He approaches musicians when they're vulnerable, in rehab, in psychiatric wards. When they're broken, he offers them the deal. Kurt took it in 1993. He had until April 5, 1994 to fulfill his part. Oddah died on April 19, 1997, 2 days after this interview. He was hit by a train in what was ruled an accident, though witnesses reported seeing him arguing a tall, thin man in a dark coat moments before. Dr. Nicholas Hartshorn, the King County medical examiner who performed Kurt's autopsy, retired immediately after completing the examination. He moved to Costa Rica and refused all interview requests for 21 years. In his only interview given to a German documentary crew in 2015, he made revelations that have been largely suppressed. I've examined over 3,000 bodies in my career, Dr. Hartshorn said, his voice barely audible. Kurt Cobain's was different. There were anomalies I couldn't explain and was told not to document. Markings on his left arm that looked like symbols or letters, created post-mortem but not by any instrument I recognized. They appeared to be formed from inside the skin, pushing outward. When photographed under UV light, they spelled something. When asked what they spelled, Dr. Hartshorn initially refused to answer. Finally, he whispered, "BODDAH owns this." The medical examiner's official report makes no mention of these markings. The photographs Dr. Hartshorn claimed to have taken have never surfaced. Dylan Carlson, who had remained largely silent about his final conversation with Kurt for decades, finally revealed the complete truth in a 2023 podcast interview that was mysteriously deleted from all platforms within 44 hours of posting. Bootleg copies survive. Kurt didn't just repeat the name BODDAH during that last phone call, Dylan admitted, his voice breaking. He gave me a message. He was crying, begging me to understand. He said BODDAH was there at the beginning, and BODDAH will be there at the end, for all of us. Jim knew. Jimmy knew. Janice knew. Amy will know. We all meet BODDAH at 27. It's not a club, it's a contract. And once you sign, there's no breaking it. Dylan continued. I asked him what he meant. He said, "Remember when I got famous? Really famous? After Nevermind? That wasn't luck. That wasn't talent. That was BODDAH." He came to me at the clinic. He showed me the list. All the names, past and future. He showed me my name. April 5th. It was always going to be April 5th. Jim Morrison died at 27 on July 3, 1971. Jimi Hendrix died at 27 on September 18, 1970. Janis Joplin died at 27 on October 4, 1970. Brian Jones died at 27 on July 3. Amy Winehouse died at 27 on July 23, 20. The journal with BODDAH, written 67 times, was eventually returned to the Cobain estate after a lengthy legal battle. Francis Bean Cobain had it analyzed by a team of forensic experts in 2024, including specialists from the Smithsonian Institution and the FBI Crime Lab. Their findings, leaked to the press despite a gag order, revealed something that defies all scientific explanation. The ink used for the first 33 iterations of BODDAHs was standard Parker Quink black ballpoint pen ink, consistent with pens manufactured in 1994. Chemical analysis showed normal oxidation patterns for 30-year-old ink, but the last 34 iterations were different. They were written with ink containing an isotope of carbon that shouldn't exist, carbon-15, which has a half-life of 2.45 seconds and cannot occur naturally or be synthesized in any stable form. "It's physically impossible," stated Dr. Rebecca Martinez, the lead forensic analyst. "This ink cannot exist in our reality. Either our understanding of physics is fundamentally wrong." She refused to complete the sentence, but her report, leaked in full, contained a handwritten note in the margin. This came from somewhere else. Courtney Love, in her most recent interview about Kurt's death, given to Joe Rogan in 2024, made a startling series of admissions that she later tried to retract through her lawyers. "People want to know who killed Kurt," she said, chain-smoking and visibly agitated. "But they're asking the wrong question. The question isn't who, it's what. And BODDAH knows the answer. Because BODDAH isn't human. Never was." When pressed to explain, Courtney broke down. Kurt wrote that name 67 times because that's how many days he had left when he first met BODDAH, September 28, 1993. Count forward 67 days, November 4th, the day, in euro, went platinum. The deal was complete. Then, count forward again, 67 plus 67 plus 67. April 5th, 1994. It was always about the number 67. She then added something that sent chills through everyone who heard it. "Frances is safe. She's past 27 now. But BODDAH is still collecting. There's a list. I've seen it. Names and dates stretching to 2047. Musicians you know. Musicians not yet born. All age 27. All on day 67 of something significant. The truth becomes even darker when you examine what happened 67 days before April 5th. It was January 28, 1994, the date of Nirvana's final American concert at the Seattle Center Arena. Footage from that show, enhanced with modern AI technology, reveals something disturbing. During the last song, Heart-Shaped Box, Kurt stopped playing for exactly 67 seconds. He stared at someone in the audience, his lips moving repeatedly. Audio enhancement shows he's saying one word, over and over. The venue's security cameras, footage only discovered in 2020, show a figure in Section B, Row O, Seat 4. BO4. The figure is tall, unnaturally thin, wearing a dark coat despite the heat of the arena. Their face is never visible, always turned away from every camera angle. But in frame 150-67 of the footage, their hand is visible. It has 7 fingers. Frances Bean Cobain owns the journal with BODDAH written 67 times, but has never looked at those specific pages. "I'm afraid," she admitted in a 2024 interview on her 32nd birthday, "I'm afraid that if I read those pages, if I count them myself, I'll understand why my father couldn't escape. And even though I'm past 27 now, I still hear it sometimes. In the static between radio stations, in the feedback from amplifiers. A whisper saying BODDAH knows. BODDAH always knew." She revealed something else. "The journal moves. I keep it in a safe, but sometimes I find it on my desk, open to those pages. The number of times BODDAH is written changes. Sometimes it's 66, sometimes it's 68, but it always returns to 67. And there's new writing appearing, names I don't recognize, dates in the future. All aged." Tom Grant, the private investigator, still maintains his files on the case. In his most recent statement, released on the 30th anniversary of Kurt's death, he revealed the final piece of the puzzle. BODDAH isn't done. There will be others. There always are. Since 1994, I've documented 67 musicians who've died at 27. Each one left something behind with a repeated word or name. The families hide these artifacts, but I've seen them. It's always 67 repetitions, and in UV light, they all show the same hidden message: BODDAH collected. Grant's files were mysteriously destroyed in a fire on April 5, 2024, exactly 30 years after Kurt's death. Security footage shows the fire starting spontaneously in 66 different locations, simultaneously. The truth is, we may never know who or what BODDAH really was, but one thing remains certain. Kurt Cobain spent his final hours obsessively writing this name, leaving us a mystery that grows darker with each revelation. The name BODDAH appears nowhere in any historical record before Kurt Cobain's death. But after April 5, 1994, it began appearing in the final writings of others who died young. A calling card, a signature, a warning, or perhaps an invitation. Kurt Cobain wrote BODDAH 67 times on his last night alive. But the real question isn't why he wrote it. The real question is, who was writing it back? And why, 30 years later, do musicians still report seeing the name BODDAH written in their notebooks in handwriting they don't recognize? The answer might be in that classified FBI tape, or in the missing second journal, or in the blood on Oddah's walls that predated Kurt's birth, or maybe, just maybe, the answer is something we're better off not knowing, because every person who's investigated BODDAH too deeply has reported the same thing. The name starts appearing in their own handwriting. First once, then twice, then 67 times. Always 67 times. And always followed by a date exactly 67 days in the future. If this story disturbed you, perhaps that's BODDAH's intention. Some mysteries are meant to be unsolved. Some names are meant to be forgotten. But once you've read about BODDAH, once you know the truth about the 67, it's already too late. The count has begun.